The wind sliced through the dirt-red streets as night fell over Ouagadougou, bringing with it an unease that hung like mist in the quietest alleys. The vendors were already packing up their wares, the lanterns' lights flickered in the breeze, and the smell of burning firewood mingled with the distant murmur of a people in eternal expectation. In this setting walked Ibrahim Traoré, his steps firm, his gaze alert, yet carrying on his shoulders the weight of someone who knows intimately the pain of the wronged and the hope of the forgotten. He was not merely the president, the commander, or the symbol. Above all, he was a man willing to listen to the silence, to descend to the ground of the squares where the real struggle happens, the kind that doesn't make the newspapers. That night, something different guided his steps. At every corner, Ibrahim felt there was something waiting for him, a story yet untold. The dark sky, studded with stars, seemed to watch him with complicity, as if it knew that behind that simple stride, another page of triumph was being born, one of those that change destinies. It was at the intersection of two streets, between the nearly empty market and a modest bakery, that Traoré heard a faint, timid cry, almost drowned out by the distant roar of motorcycles. He stopped. He observed. And he noticed, leaning against the wall, a small figure trembling with cold and fear. It was a child, no older than 8, in tattered clothes, his large eyes gleaming in the dark, but his face marked by exhaustion and abandonment. Without saying a word, Traoré approached, sitting beside the child, respecting the silence, as if he understood that sometimes the greatest gesture is simply being present. For a long moment, neither spoke. Time passed slowly, honoring the pain and distrust that alternated in the boy's gaze. It was Traoré who broke the silence, his voice gentle, almost a whisper. "What's your name, little warrior?" The boy hesitated, glanced around as if fearing the shadows, and answered softly, "They call me Yakuba." His voice trembled, but deep down there was a spark, a thread of hope, as if that simple act, someone caring, was already a miracle. Ibrahim removed his coat and draped it over the boy's shoulders, shielding him from the cold and the world. "Today, you're no longer alone, Yakuba," he said, looking into the child's eyes as if planting a promise in his heart. As the conversation unfolded, Traoré learned that Yakuba had been lost for days, separated from his mother during a commotion at the central market. The family had come from the countryside seeking work, but the city, vast and impersonal, had swallowed their dreams. Yet the boy carried a different look. There was something hidden in him, a subtle strength, almost imperceptible, but Ibrahim recognized it immediately, the gift of those who resist, who survive, who turn pain into a seed. Seeing the boy's condition, hungry, dirty, exhausted, Traoré took him to a nearby shelter where children and mothers received support. There, under dim light, as he slowly ate a simple plate of rice, Yakuba still seemed wary of the stranger's kindness. But a single question changed everything. "What makes you happy, Yakuba?" The answer took time but came laden with truth. "I like to hear sounds. I hear everything. I can tell when it's going to rain before it does. I hear even what's far away." Ibrahim realized then that the boy was not just sensitive. He had a rare gift, finely tuned ears, a hidden talent for perceiving sounds and rhythms that no one else noticed. The next day, Traoré went further. He took Yakuba to the neighborhood's cultural center, where musicians rehearsed with drums, koras, and flutes. At first shy, the boy stayed in the background, just watching. But when one of the musicians lost the rhythm, it was Yakuba who, almost unconsciously, began tapping his hands on his knee, perfectly following the beat. The musicians exchanged surprised glances. Ibrahim, attentive, smiled. He asked Yakuba to try playing. Hesitant, the boy picked up a small djembe, and what followed was magical. His fingers found the exact rhythm, creating melodies and beats as if he had always played, as if the music had been inside him since birth. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. For the first time, Yakuba smiled genuinely, his eyes shining not with fear, but with pride. Traoré knelt before him and said, "Never again let anyone tell you that you're worthless. What you carry is a gift, a heritage the world needs to know." The children around them drew closer, touching Yakuba's shoulders, accepting him as part of the invisible tribe of those with talent and courage, even when the world insists on denying them. The news of the Boy of Sound spread quickly through the neighborhood. Mothers and fathers began asking about him. Musicians came from afar to hear his rhythm. But not everything was celebration. The reunion with his mother, when it finally happened, was dramatic. She arrived crying, desperate, thinking she had lost her son forever. When she saw Yakuba beside Traoré, playing the drum, she didn't know whether to thank or scold. It took Ibrahim's intervention, explaining everything he had seen in the boy, showing that there was more than a story of loss. There was a seed of a future, of hope, of family redemption. But as with every story of triumph, challenges arose. The market owner where Yakuba had been found disliked the attention. Feeling exposed, accused of negligence, he began spreading rumors that Traoré was using children for self-promotion. Some local government members also grew suspicious, believing Traoré's gesture was, in fact, a challenge to the established order, a threat to the fragile balance of appearances. The pressure mounted. Sensationalist newspapers published distorted headlines, questioning the president's motives for getting so directly involved in minor cases. That same week, authorities scheduled a public meeting to clarify the episode. They aimed to expose Traoré, accuse him of populism, and pin his image against the wall before a crowd. However, what followed would change everything, not only Yakuba's life, but the entire city. On the morning of the big meeting, the square was packed. The sun hadn't yet broken through the clouds, but the weight of an entire community's gaze was already palpable, a mix of curiosity, indignation, and hope. Men in suits, local authorities, hurried journalists, mothers with children in their arms, young artists, and elders with calloused hands, all crowded together, forming a sea of faces anxious for answers. At the center, a small makeshift stage, surrounded by ropes, awaited Ibrahim Traoré, who, despite all the pressure, arrived without an escort, walking among the people as if each step were a vote of confidence in the truth he carried. The first minutes were tense. Government representatives began speaking, trying to set the tone of the event. "We must maintain order and ensure every action is responsible," one of them declared, casting hard glances at Traoré. The market owner, emboldened by the microphone, tried to defend himself. "We cannot tolerate rumors destroying our reputation." The murmurs grew. Journalists prodded, seeking the controversial, quote, the contradiction, the scandal. The atmosphere seemed on the verge of exploding. But when Yakuba appeared, hand in hand with Traoré, silence fell over the crowd like a veil. The boy looked frightened, but felt the security of the man beside him. The people realized this was more than a story of abandonment. It was a story of rescue. With a firm yet emotional voice, Traoré took the microphone. He didn't give long speeches or cite laws or titles. He spoke as a man, as a father, as someone who understands the value of empathy. What makes us great is not the power we hold, but the care we dedicate to the least among us. Every invisible child carries within them the future of our nation. If we don't listen to their voices, if we don't make space for their talents, we will lose not just people but destinies. The crowd fell silent, struck by the weight of each word. His adversaries tried to interrupt, but they were drowned out by the growing murmurs of approval from the people. Then, without warning, Traoré invited Yakuba onto the stage and asked the musicians to bring instruments. The boy hesitated, but Traoré's encouraging look was enough. With hands still trembling, Yakuba began to play. At first, a timid beat. Then the rhythm gained strength until the entire square joined in the music, mothers clapping, children dancing, young people smiling. It wasn't just a performance, it was a cry of resistance, a manifesto for the dignity of the forgotten. When the final beat echoed, The square erupted in applause. Tears streamed from Yakuba's mother's eyes as she ran to her son and hugged him tightly, as if finally reclaiming a piece of her soul. In the face of that scene, even the critics fell silent. No political argument could erase the truth of what everyone had just witnessed. The market owner, embarrassed, lowered his eyes. The government representative stammered, unable to sustain the accusations. The people, moved, understood that justice is sometimes achieved through simple gestures, and that one saved life can transform an entire city. Ibrahim Traoré embraced Yakuba, raising the boy's arm for all to see. "It's not just him who wins today. It's all of us," he declared, as the applause renewed. The impact was immediate. That same night, radio and TV stations recounted the story of the lost boy and the president who refused to turn away from suffering. Social media exploded with messages of support. Videos of the moment went viral, and Yakuba's name became a symbol of hope for thousands of anonymous children. Cultural organizations reached out to the family, offering music scholarships. The cultural center, once sparsely attended, became a meeting place for young people with hidden talents, and Ibrahim made a point to show up, encouraging every story, every new beginning. But the challenges didn't stop. Days later, reports emerged of other missing children, other families torn apart by the same inequality. Moved by his experience with Yakuba, Ibrahim launched a national proactive search program involving communities, schools, and religious leaders. It wasn't a policy for headlines. It was a commitment of the soul, a pact for collective rescue. He made a point to personally visit humble neighborhoods, sit with distressed mothers, listen to stories of pain and hope, inspiring volunteers to look into the eyes of every forgotten child. Meanwhile, Yakuba flourished. His talent was recognized by master musicians, who decided to train him, not as a circus prodigy, but as a son of tradition, someone capable of carrying forward his people's musical heritage. Every note, every rhythm learned was also a new chapter in the story of a family that, little by little, was rebuilding itself. The mother, once broken by loss, now smiled seeing her son gain respect, friends, dreams. Neighbors, once indifferent, began to help. A food basket here, a book there, a vigilant gaze always. Yakuba's story also stirred something in Traoré himself. One night, sitting beside the boy, he confided, "Sometimes I think it takes more courage to love than to fight." The boy, not grasping the depth of the words, responded with a shy but genuine smile, saying only, "You found me when I needed it most. I'll never forget." In that moment, Traoré realized, true leadership isn't measured by titles or achievements, but by the ability to transform individual destinies, even if one at a time. The journey's end was marked by a symbolic event. In the city's central square, they organized a grand musical performance, bringing together children from various communities, local artists, and authorities. Traoré, simple as ever, sat among the people, without privileges, just another among those who believe in the power of the collective. When Yakuba took the stage, now confident and happy, he was received as a hero. He played, sang, smiled, and, at the end, dedicated the music to his mother, to Traoré, and to all the children waiting to be seen. The audience rose, cheering the boy and celebrating not just talent, but triumph, reunion, and renewed hope. Amid the celebration, an elderly woman approached Traoré and said, "Today you saved more than a life. You saved our faith in better days." He merely smiled, thanking her silently, knowing that the greatest victories happen far from the spotlight, in the daily battles fought within the heart. With music echoing through the city, entire families returned home carrying more than memories. They carried the certainty that, even in the darkest nights, a single outstretched hand can reignite the light of hope. And so, Ouagadougou fell asleep under a new atmosphere, one of trust, pride, and the real possibility of change. Ibrahim Traoré, walking the streets that night, knew there was still much to be done, but he also knew that as long as there was courage to act and compassion to listen, no child would have to face the loneliness of abandonment. The next morning, Ibrahim Traoré visited Yakuba and his mother, bringing with him only a smile and the certainty of having fulfilled the noblest duty: to see where the world ignores, to hear where silence reigns. The boy, now part of a new story, hugged Traoré tightly, whispering, "Thank you for believing in me." In that moment, something changed forever. A life was restored, a family reborn, and an entire community learned that sometimes a single act of humanity is enough to transform the destiny of an entire nation. And hope at last smiled back at everyone.